My sister also told me that I was causing my mother to be sick and weak, and that coming to see me in further prison was tearing her apart. An excerpt from chapter 2 of Angels Are Not Just for Kids by Kathryn Garten. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel and to the review of Kathryn Garten's Angels Are Not Just for Kids that I happen to have two copies of it here with me. And it's really been a long while with me with reviews, and it's really been a long while that I expand the genre of memoir, genre of real life stories. And I'm kind of excited really that I'm reviewing Kathryn Garten's books today. I have two copies of it, one a bit deeper cover and it's a bit lighter. So it's quite great that I happen to have experienced Kathryn Garten's writing. It's quite amazing, really, because I found most of the things that the author talk about here to be quite harrowing. I mean, most memoirs, like we all know, are typical, heart-wrenching, very sad stories. And I don't think anyone ever wrote a memoir about, my dad is very rich. We had 3 square meal. We had fun traveling around the world, etc. Well, there might be memoirs in that category, but most of the memoirs that I've read and most of the ones that I think stood out in the market of literature are the ones with harrowing experiences, like the ones I've read and reviewed so far in the channel so far, the ones I've ever experienced so far. I had stories that touch the heart, stories that are quite very sad, stories that are extremely emotional, stories that are quite harrowing, stories that are tearful, yeah, stories that that you have a lot of roller coasters in it. And I think such a it when I read through Kathryn Garden's Angels Are Not Just for Kids. I've heard about this book because I had a fish friend with Garden, I think 2 months or a month ago, thereabout. I cannot remember. But then reading it, particularly to me, seems to be very, very hard. It's very saddening and emotional. I could feel the presence of God in the protagonist's life, and I could relate with the fact that the title makes justification for the stories of the characters embedded in the book Angels Are Not Just for Kids. Before I proceed in my review, I'd love to read to you the synopsis at the back page of the book. This is a book about the hope we all hold in our heart that we are not alone. This book is about people who believe that everything that happens to us can be from another source beside earthly or practical. In fact, not everything can be explained, especially when it comes to miracles. We are constantly surrounded by life forces that we cannot explain. Some say it was because we are entertaining angels, and others call it a visitation. Sometimes things happen to us because the supernatural marries us to the natural. It gives us hope that we are not alone and that angels are watching over us to let us know that we are being guided by a power greater than ourselves. I love the last ending part, that we are being guided by a power greater than ourselves. So this book, due to the life experience of the protagonist, who also happens to me to be the writer, Kathryn Garten, from a childhood age to a teenage years to adulthood, and a lot of it encapsulated in a single book of memoir. The author started our journey by telling us a bit about the protagonist. I mean, the features, the characteristics that define her, her beauty, her personality, her being such a sweet soul, how great she was, how loving she was, etc. The transitioning of her experience in teenage years and her experience with several kind of accident that nearly took her life, and how God miraculously saved her from such kind of experiences. One of which that really stood with me was different types she had. I mean, in the book, I've read so many experiences that was like experiences actually that are quite suspenseful. Experiences that while reading it, I was a bit afraid to see what's going to become of the outcome of her, if she's going to survive it or not. And at some point, I think that had the suspenseful feature that the book possesses. It's as if you're reading a crime thriller novel or reading a fantasy with a terrible twist that you're looking for to see if the character survive it or not. Yeah. So in there, most of the experiences that has to do with accident and now the protagonist was miraculously saved from them are quite scenic. They're quite suspenseful. And the type that you read and you keep like, oh, looking forward to see, I hope she survive it. One of the ones that stood with me while I read the book was the fall of the World Trade Center Tower in New York, which Kathryn wrote a beautiful yet surprising story around that got me panicking. I was wildly actually panicking because I was surprised that really this is very, very, this is unbelievable. And again, I experienced with her husband when they traveled to Rome in Italy, and how something kept whispering to her that we need to leave here, we need to leave here. I mean, their aim back then in Italy wasn't yet realized, but then something kept telling her, we need to leave here, we need to leave here, and they had to book the next flight the next day. And while on the flight, they had the news that something happened where they had just left. So I think all of this, to me, while I was reading the book, actually, I need to mention that I learned a lot in the book. Part of it I learned was in different scenarios, different description of what happens from one character to another, from the mother to the experience she had in the prison, to the experience she had with her kids, and now with her husband. In here, I could feel, talking about the experience with the husband in Rome and Italy, I could feel that the protagonist has a discerning spirit that I think everybody needs to have in order to discern and to spice, to sense if something bad or good is impending, is coming on the way. And I think she mentioned that this is a trait too that is particular to her grandmother, and perhaps she must have inherited it from her. So in here, there's so many other roller coaster that really stood out. That are quite alarming. They are very compelling and very wholesome to me, really. I'm really short of words now, particularly I need to describe it. Yeah, and there's several kind of accident experiences, several kind of incidents that you would think she might not live to tell the story, but here actually she does. And just like I felt while reading the book, angels are not just for kids, they are for everyone. They are for both adult, young, old age, male, female, irrespective of your color. Angels are always there. I mean, the book to me sort of dead back to the reassurance that angels are with us, the reassurance that someone out there is looking out for us, that we cannot even explain how far or how real is that. That someone out there, it's looking out for our good. It's always there to protect and guide us, and that the experiences of life sometimes could be beyond human understanding, could be beyond what we can see with our physical eyes, or we can touch with our physical hands, or we can perceive with a physical sense of organ, but then beyond the things we can see with our naked eyes, beyond the physical understanding, and could have a bit of transitioning or a touch into the spiritual sort of realm. Yeah, and there are themes of imprisonment in the book too. That's quite very sad, really, because I remember the protagonist sharing experience in the prison with the readers, which was quite very sad. How they would count them like inventory stock, how they would have to tell them what to do and what not to do, and now at most of a point or most of her life in there, she always feel that she doesn't belong here. She always feel that she's not supposed to be here, and yet he had nothing to do than to fix the whatever experience that comes with being a prisoner. The protagonist also talk a bit about our job experiences, our life, our family, our husband, our kids, and several others. One that I particularly loved too was the description of our mother. I think a feature to me, it's very amazing because it speaks well of motherhood. The fact that the mother of the protagonist is very old, an aged woman, yet make it a necessity to always visit, a daughter in the prison. That's an excerpt that I read in the introduction part of my review. I now knew why my mother did not come. I mean, it got to a point the mother stopped coming, and the protagonist is trying to figure out why exactly. But then when our sister told her that her mother is not so excited coming to visit her in the prison, and that coming to see her always tear her apart. And that's actually very true. And most times the protagonist always blame herself for that. And again, oh wow, I must not forget this. One of the most striking, very sad, emotional was a scenario that surrounded the death of the protagonist's mother. Very emotional, very deep. You just need to read the book really to tell, yeah. It's very emotional and very deep. And how the protagonist sank in the church and how they broke the news surrounding her mother demise to her and several other. It's a roller coaster, it's a novel, it's a book, it's a story full of a lot of emotion, it's a story full of a lot of hardship. It's a story full of a lot of ups and downs, ebbs and lows of life. And it is just so sad, really. And also, to some other part, too, I found some part of the book to be darkly humorous. I mean, dark humor, the incorporation of dark humor. There's a part where I think the author had an accident, yeah, and while the doctors were trying to save her life, she was crying, but she wasn't crying because they're trying to save her life or she's in pain having an accident. She was crying basically because the surgeon tore off a newly pair of trousers that she just bought. I'm gonna read that section. Yeah, I cried, but not because I was in pain, but because all I could think was how I was going to afford another pair. They were an expensive brand name chain. They were the only ones I had. I didn't have a spare. It was as if no one cared about my Jordan jeans. It was obvious they didn't know about the latest fashion or what was important to a teenager. That part is very hilarious. I mean, I laughed because looking at the scenarios that comes before this section, yeah, it's meant to be sad, yeah, absolutely sad, really. But then to see that the protagonist it's caring about something entirely different from our well-being now, it's very hilarious. And also the use of words, which is something I really love about Katyn's writing style. It was obvious they didn't know about the latest fashion, what was important to a teenager. That was down to earth hilarious, yeah. And also, I think the other utilization of humor in the book, and I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of consider Catherine's writing style to be quite poetic. She has a style of writing that is poetic in nature. One that you read and you'll be like, oh wow, I love that line. I mean, you have to read the line and go back to the sentence again, read it again to digest the beauty, the love, and the depth of literature quality that's embedded in the book. There are actually so many other things to talk about in Angels and Not Just for Kids, but because of my attempt to keep it to spoiler free, I wouldn't love to give much away. And yeah, I need to mention the fact that I love the faith-based theme in the book. I love the imprisonment theme in the book, and the fact that at some point, when the protagonist was passing through hard issues of life, when she had nothing, I read a part where she went to the church and left a last dime in the author, just like the woman in the Bible did. And she was like, "Well, God, I'm giving all that I had to you. I want you to take perfect control because I am tired." I mean, and I think at some point we must have felt that way. I mean, there are so many relatable scenes in the book. There are so many ones that you'll be like, oh, I think I've gone through this. And also, there are other scenarios that have to do with paying back a bank loan, and now she's gonna pay back a bank debt, and now she's gonna do this, and now she's gonna take cater for her children, and now she's gonna cater for a beautiful daughter and son, and several other experiences in the book that I find to be very harrowing, very deep, emotional, and entrenching. I wouldn't love to give much away in my attempt to keep the review spoiler free because I obviously wouldn't like to give much away. Yeah, but Angels Not Just for Kids, it's a book that I would love to recommend, that I so much love, that is very emotional to me, that is pulling, that is sad, that is harrowing, that's heart wrenching, and there are so many features, qualities, literature qualities in it that are beyond description. That are very wholesome, that are just exceptional, and I so much recommend this book to lovers of memoir and literature at large. Yeah, so if you would like to get a copy of Angels and Not Just for Kids, if you find my review of it to be quite compelling and you'd like to check it out, I left a link in the description part of this review where you can get a copy directly on Amazon. So thank you so much for watching my short video book recommendation of Angels and Not Just for Kids by Kathryn Garten. See you in my next review. Goodbye.